Right, this is video number 4 in the series and follows on very neatly from the polishing video that you've probably just watched. Once you've polished, you have to remove each batch from your group and you're going to be counter boring each outside face of your 2 pairs of pieces of acrylic. Let me just show you an example here of why you need to counter bore each of the sides. You'll remember from the very first video where we looked at how your yo-yo is put together that we're going to be using a bolt all the way through, but the bolt has a head that needs to be lost. Now if you look at this black piece here, you'll see when you look at it from the edge you can no longer see the head of the bolt, but when you look at the top of it, that bolt head's visible. And the reason that it sits below the surface is because that's been counterbored, and that black piece of acrylic, that black layer, has been removed down to the yellow layer so that the head can sit flush. Now we do that because we want to hide the unsightly bolt head, but also we want to put a design on top. You'll remember that we have a third layer that goes on the outside which has the design cut into it. You see this example here has the spider cut out, so that when the spider is then placed back in a different contrasting colour, it covers over or hides that bolt head. Okay, now we're going to use the centre lathe again to do that, and we're going to be taking our pieces of acrylic and wrapping the edge in masking tape. So if we go back to the yellow bit, your yellow pair, which can stay stuck together as a pair so long as you're boring out the outside faces. Okay, so in this instance I want the yellow to be my outside edge. And I'm going to wrap my edge with a piece of masking tape. The purpose of the masking tape is so that when we put it in the chuck of the centre lathe again, the teeth of the chuck won't actually scratch into that beautifully polished edge that you've just spent ages doing. So just one circle around that, and then we're ready to put that into the lathe again. So if we move over to the lathe, you have to open the lathe jaws quite wide, and it might be that you have to use the large centre lathe for this operation. The smaller lathes, sometimes the teeth fall out of the chuck. So place it in and make sure it's tight up against the edge of the chuck, or the back of the chuck, nice and tight and square, and then you can tighten it up again using the chuck key. That's obviously holding that in position. Now we've changed the tool that's in the tailstock, and you'll notice from the previous video we had in there a live centre. The live centre, you'll remember, looked like that, and you'll notice that this one has been changed to a Jacob's chuck. Right, now that looks identical to the chuck that you'll find in a pillar drill, and what we've done here is to mount in that an end mill cutter, right, which is a little bit like a drill bit but has a square end to it, so you end up with a nice square edge. Okay, so having put our piece of work in the chuck of the lathe, we're then ready to drill out that outside face of the acrylic. Now you only want to go through the yellow face, so some care will be needed here so that you don't run your drill right through all 4 pieces. You only want to go through one layer at a time. So you can move the tailstock in so that it's almost touching that piece. Lock it in position. We can start our lathe. Okay, and you'll notice that the acrylic spins and the cutter stays stationary. Take that tape off, you'll be able to see more clearly what's going on. If I try and zoom in, so we're easing that cutter in, but we're being very careful to be looking out for the colour of the waste coming out. You only want to go through one layer. Sometimes there's a slight click as you've gone through one layer. So you've done that, and then stop the machine and check it. Now if you want to, obviously while you're doing it you can stop and check. Rather do that than take too much out. When you've done that face, then you need to take that batch out, turn it round, and do exactly the same operation again on the other side. But you'll notice that now sits down below the surface. Okay, that's important. Right, so that operation is then completed on the other side. And don't forget, it may be that there's one person going to be responsible in your group for doing this, that they'll then have to do exactly the same thing, same operation, for all the other bits. Okay, so chuck guard down again. Cutter in place. Lock it in position. Start the machine. And then cut through. Carefully.